if I could also welcome Josh back to the stage, and Adrian, if you are able to be ready to give this microphone to people in the crowd, I'll invite you guys into the pink box of whatever it is. Doom? I hope not. Thanks, Adrian. And yeah, I guess echoing a lot of the sentiments here that you guys are talking about with respect to, good design and, occupant comfort. It's really great to see beautiful spaces that are being realised. And, you've obviously got to trade off those performance metrics with how a space feels. And that's obviously where you get a good architect, a good designer in. I'm going to open the floor to questions. We have a question over here.
It's funny that you've got the fireplace that you're not using. Is that a pyroclastic?
It is.
Yeah, they're good. That's all.
I'll just answer that. The reason I specify pyroclastics is and for those in the room who don't know, most Australian-made manufactured fireplaces, their emissions are good but not brilliant. The pyroclastic, which is from New Zealand, is the only one that meets European standards for emissions. It's 0.3 grams per kilogram of fuel as an emission. It's a very small fuel box, so it burns very hot, and therefore the emissions meet European standards for asthma. There is no other fireplace in Australia that does that.
Correct answer. I've got a masonry heater that's even better, but it's more expensive.
Good questions, love it, or statements. As a enjoyer of fires, I also agree that it's very lovely. It does make the wine taste better. It is very true. So I've got one which I guess covers a few different topics. So climate change, cost of living, housing crisis. We're all kind of balancing and juggling all of these really big challenges in this day and age. And I guess the pervasive argument that we're seeing from a lot of volume builders is it's more expensive to build sustainably. Obviously, we've heard from both of you in terms of some really great design outcomes that can be realised with pretty cost-effective, ways of balancing things out. For the lay people in the room, the people who might not be engineers or architects. Can either of you give us a couple of examples of some, really quite tangible and real things that you can do as part of your, home design to realise some good budget sustainability options?
Air tightness, number one. If you're living in a leaky house and you can seal up those gaps, that is the most cost-effective way of improving your energy performance, so that heat going into the house stays in the house. So I think we all live in leaky boxes generally. So if we can reduce that air changes down to, I think you were going for 5. If you're trying to renovate a house and you're going to get it close to 7, you're doing pretty well. So that's the big bang for your buck. Next level is your glazing, but that's more expensive. So, and it was interesting to hear your UPVC is more expensive, because I found it the other way around. High performance, good metal frames are more expensive than UPVC. Anyway, that's
Aluminium manufacturer may have not been from Australia.
yes, I know the one. Cool.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
I can add to that. I would second that, definitely air tightness. And I think if you live in an existing home, don't be intimidated by retrofitting for building ceiling. My business partner would agree with me that I am useless with tools, but there's things you can do in terms of building ceiling, whether that's dampers on exhaust fans, door sills, ceiling quads. Expanding foam goes a long way. I learned that the hard way. But it's a fun project. It's a low-cost item, everything at Bunnings, and we've been involved in projects where they've dropped their air leakage rate from sort of mid-30s down to 8, 9s, which is better than some volume builders at the moment. Orientation is free, so passive design is free, so start thinking about that. But at the moment, there is some very big incentives for solar and battery, the return on investment for batteries is now good, whereas I think historically a lot of people lent on the fact that, I'm only going to own this house for 10 years, I won't get my money back. That has definitely changing. And the whole energy markets are changing in terms of abilities to spot price back to the grid. And with the development of AI and apps and things like that, you don't need to be super involved in it. You can download an app and run that. So yeah, there's some really simple things that aren't big ticket items that can go a long way, whether you've got an existing house or thinking about designing a new home.
Thank you very much, Josh. Do we have any more audience questions? Yes, we do.
Just when you said there hadn't been much change in the building sustainability side of things, what's your assessment on the change from 6-star to 7-star and any effectiveness or not?
Good question. For those that know me in the room, I'm not a fan of the NatHERS system. It's certainly made builders think. So we represent a lot of the volume in South Australia, and they've open to upping their base spec and that sort of thing. But there are other methods in the code as well. So and they sort of some work easier than others. I don't think upping the NatHERS system is the answer. I'd actually lean on our UK friends. The Part L building code over there is my favourite building code. And effectively they mandate specification. So maximum insulation you have to do, glazing, building ceiling, and then they talk about a net kilowatt or net megajoules per square metre, and that's including services. So they've got high performance fabric, and then they're meeting their emissions through mandating emissions per square metre, and that still allows you to design a massive home with lots of glass. You've just got to pay for things in another way, and I think that's a flexible approach, and we've certainly tried to throw our votes in through various building associations to have that done at state level. So one of the LBS's proposals was, hey, let's kick the can down the road for 5 years, because every time I release a new building code, everyone lobbies anyway. So why don't we just kick the can down the road, up fabric substantially, give the industry 5 years to figure it out, and then they can't lobby for it, mandate efficient services. And we ran a whole lot of data around greenhouse gas emissions and what that would mean in terms of grid dependency and all that sort of stuff and overall emissions, and presented that via a variety of... It got some traction, didn't get far enough, unfortunately. But I guess the short answer to your question is I don't think there's been a big change from 6 to 7, and I don't think there'll be a big change from 7 to 8. Yeah.
I mean, my personal experience is that, client came to me and said, I want to work with this builder. They're going to build me a 7-star home. And I'm like, that's minimum requirements. It's like getting a flushing toilet. So it was, it shouldn't be that hard. And there's a lot of fear in the industry about it. You're right. It's not made and I think the compliance testing about it as well, is the real kicker. As long as we're in a system where the builder is self-certifying, that is going to be a problem, because you might have in your NatHERS certificate, all the whiz-bang glazing and then and insulation, and if insulation's not installed right and the glazing doesn't go in correctly, then it doesn't matter. Anyway.
Brings up a couple of interesting talking points as well. We'll definitely have another question over here. I guess adding to that, the energy performance certificates for existing buildings is also a very interesting one, in that it cannot change hands in the UK without getting an energy performance certificate, and the energy performance certificate mandates a minimum baseline performance requirement, so you can't flog bad stuff. So that is another great leverage piece that you can say, hey, if you want to sell a home, upgrade it.
I've got a question about the Second Valley home. When you were building the house, did you use the environment to improve sustainability, or was it kind of just another factor that you left out?
In terms of so a little bit. I mean, in part, like connecting to the landscape was a big part, and the form, which I've already spoken about a bit. It also did inform the material choices. So if anyone has been down that part of the world, there's a lot of galahs, and they're vicious. They eat buildings. And so there's no timber on this building because it would be eaten by the fabric, by the local wildlife. And also, it's a watercourse. It's the reserve is there because the area around it is a watercourse. So the building is elevated in order to accommodate the watercourse still running through the landscape. So I guess that's part of it. You know, I think buildings have to be responsive in terms of how they address landscape, both in terms of they have to you know, you're spending a lot of money. You don't want it to get eaten or fall down or burn down. And secondly, you don't want it to, but you don't want it to be too interruptive with it. So yeah, there was that balance of, yes, I mean, every building interrupts the landscape, but we're trying to do less. The footprint is very small. So that's perhaps my best answer to your question.
Thank you.
It's something that oftentimes people forget, that building smaller is the most sustainable thing you can do. And ultimately, if you build with less, you are building more sustainably. So it's a very simple thing to do. But if you are comparing a 150 square meter home to a 300 meter square home all day, that 150 square meter home is going to be ultimately, I think, more sustainable, really. Do we have a final question? I'll give you my mic.
Well, now you mention that a smaller house is more sustainable, I seem to remember NatHERS makes it easier to meet 7 stars with a bigger house. Is there any comments about that?
Technically, you are correct. NatHERS hates small houses. Anyone that works in apartments and does studio assessments or anything like that would agree with that. I don't want to dive too deep in this, but I do have the tendency to do that. NatHERS is a spreadsheet. So it's a spreadsheet with front ends that you're allowed to use, and there's a bunch of thresholds built into that. And one of them is square meter rates. It does give benefit, as in it will give you like +2, +3 stars for having a smaller home, but then you put windows in it, and then it takes that away when glazing to floor area ratios get over a certain threshold. So it is quite hard to achieve a high star rating with this design. Obviously, 6.7, and looking at the glass and the size of the building, I think that's a great outcome, and I would say that it would probably outperform a 8-star building that was bigger or that sort of thing. So the short answer to the question is it doesn't like small buildings, but it also hates big buildings. So there's a variety of thresholds that are in the software that are what I'll call band-aids, and the software has just had band-aids for a long period of time. And to close out on that, it's a benchmarking tool. It's not a sustainable design tool. And I think there needs to be a culture shift away from using it as a sustainable design tool. It's a compliance tool. And there is a lot of other software packages and very experienced people and designers that can give you a much better net result that isn't tied to a star.
One more question, gentlemen.
Hello. Just bringing it back to pricing and costing again. This is a beautiful house, obviously, but I guess my question's around how realistic a house like that would be for a first home builder, I guess, like young people that want to build sustainably.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
and
no, that's fair enough. Look, and so the client doesn't mind me sharing. That was the contract sum, including all the landscaping and septic system, was about $750,000. So yes, it's not a cheap home, but it's also income producing. So they rent out that space upstairs, 2 weekends a month. It's the decision it could have been a cheaper home, but anyway, it's enjoyable. In terms of making things more sustainable, though, like again, just echo that thing. You can build a really small, nice home for 130, 140 square meters. It's using simple materials without overdoing your design, and do a really nice job, and get to a sort of a somewhere that is affordable and achievable. If you're trying to do bespoke, you're never going to get to volume builder rates. That's the trick. It's just never going to happen because they have buying power at scale, so that's always going to be difficult. But the best way to do it is set your expectations for small and spaces, and you can go a long way there.
It's a very good question. Yes, all about the affordability and the small. And I think with that, we will now once again thank our two wonderful presenters for speaking today. Can I give a quick round of applause for Josh and Paul?